Ah! Welcome, dear viewer, to medieval England, a magical realm where beer flowed like water, wolves still roamed the countryside, and punishment was, shall we say, enthusiastically applied. Picture it, Cirencester 1208, Ascottal. Think village piss-up meets tax scheme. Everyone's there not because they love ale, even though they do, but because the local forest official might make their lives hell if they don't attend. So a man by the name of John Scott attends. He drinks, he rides home, spots Richard of Crudwell. "Hop on the horse," he says cheerily. Richard thinks he's getting a lift, but what he gets is stabbed in the shoulder. Then again, and then robbed of 43 shillings. Somehow Richard crawled home, on all fours, and on the next day informed the king's sergeant. And if you think that's the end, oh no. Because John Scott actually decides to hold a grudge and follows this up 5 days later by breaking into Richard's mother's house and beating her so badly they thought she'd die. Honestly, medieval men took I'm not mad, just disappointed to whole new levels. But if that seems twisted, wait until we visit a convent in Yorkshire. It's the 1160s, a priest and a nun taken laying on of hands in entirely the wrong direction. The result? A scandal so spicy even the saints blushed. The nun was pregnant by a young priest with more libido than liturgy. When she confesses, the nuns don't schedule a quiet penance or call Rome. No. They kidnap the priest, drag him to her cell and hand her a knife. Now you might think, surely not. But yes, they forced her to castrate him. Then, in a moment of unparalleled sisterly support, they stuffed his severed bits into her mouth, whipped her half to death and chained her in a dungeon. Jesus wept, but apparently heaven didn't. And would you believe it? The chronicler ends by calling them champions of chastity, as if torture was just a spirited form of devotion. They loved Christ above all things, including, it seems, basic human decency. This was normal, by the way. Children carried blades, adults settled disputes with murder. Ask the wrong question in a tavern like, "Who are those chaps?" and you might find yourself stabbed to death for your curiosity. Oh, and in case you're wondering how criminals were punished, hanging, drowning, buried alive, beheaded by goat-powered guillotine, you know, the usual. In Halifax, if you were caught stealing a horse, they tied the horse to a pin holding up an axe. Then whipped the poor beast, it bolts, pulls the pin, off comes your head. A system both efficient and traumatizing for livestock. Justice was also divine. If you were a priest accused of wrongdoing, they'd give you a bit of cheese placed on the holy host and say, "Now eat it. If it sticks in your throat, you're guilty. If it doesn't, the angel Gabriel approves." Yes, cheese-based exorcism. This was law. And if you were a noble criminal, you could run to a church, hide for 40 days, then march to the coast, holding a cross like a discount Moses, and wait for the next tide out. If no boat, you had to walk into the sea daily, up to your knees. Meanwhile, back on the throne, young Henry III, aged 9, crowned with his mum's jewellery because the real crown was lost in a swamp, thanks to King John. And you can find out a little more about that incident in the previous video, Swamp of Thrones. But it was that kind of monarchy. Henry was lovely, gentle, heard 3 masses a day, loved stained glass, smiling statues, and swore he'd rather see God in a church than hear someone talk about him. Bless! But also a dreadful ruler when he was older. Gave titles to all his French cousins, filled his court with foreign hangers-on, called Parliament every time he ran out of money, which was often. And every time the barons said, "Sure, but only if you swear on the Magna Carta," and he did, then promptly ignored it. Familiar story. The man was consistent, if nothing else. Eventually, Simon de Montfort, French-born, married to the king's sister, said enough's enough. Led a rebellion, beat the king at Lewes. Took power, called the first parliament with commoners in it, invented the House of Commons. Also became a tyrant. In 1265, Prince Edward escaped, led a charge, and at Evesham it was curtains. De Montfort was killed, beheaded, and I wish I were joking, his testicles were hung from his severed head like tassels and sent as a present. Monogrammed, one assumes. This, my dear friends, is where the British sense of justice comes from. A head, a pair of balls, and a strong commitment to ceremony. Henry would go on to finish building Westminster Abbey, all soaring arches and Gothic splendour. He died old, probably confused, but surrounded by the beauty he adored. So next time someone tells you history is boring, remind them of the nun with a knife, the cheese trial of guilt, and the king who ruled with prayer and absolutely no idea what was going on. So, dear viewer, what did we learn today? We learned that medieval justice was essentially one long fever dream written by someone who drank too much ale and thought the Inquisition lacked flair. We discovered that nuns moonlighted as medieval mob bosses. Cheese could literally damn your soul. Rebels could become tyrants, and horses were occasionally promoted to the role of executioner. And that the invention of Parliament was less about noble democracy and more about stopping the king from spending all the money on incense and cousins from Savoy. We learned that if you're going to get murdered, best not do it near a tavern, a cauldron, or during a drinking contest with a goldsmith who's been leaping about with a knife. And most importantly, that England, glorious and grimy as she was, built her political institutions on equal parts bloodshed, backstabbing, beer, and just a whisper of divine cheese-based intervention. God bless the Middle Ages. Like and follow for more history, drenched in sarcasm and existential dread.